So it's not just being spurred onto action, but sustaining that action for as long as you see fit. And I think about the protests, Black Lives Matter protests. People always say, where is everybody 2 weeks later? Where's everybody 3 months later? Where's everybody 2 years later? And part of that is because that initial uprising was fueled by anger and not fueled by enough of something else that it can sustain you long term, right? Dr. Sarah L. Webb. I'm really excited about this week's topic. It's a little different, just a little different, but still relevant, I think. And so this week I'm going to be sharing 6 or 7 ideas for anyone who is interested in starting their own advocacy work or growing their advocacy work or sustaining their advocacy work. And so one reason I'm excited about this topic and inspired to do this kind of topic is that when I look around at my community of folks, welcome, come in. Speaking of community of folks, hey y'all. So many of y'all have your own platforms, have your own causes that you fight for, are activists, are raising awareness about a vast array of issues. Many of them related to colorism or racism, but so many different issues. And I'm inspired when I scroll through my feeds and hear your stories and I see you putting out like information and informative content and just raising my awareness and helping to keep me sharp in terms of, things that are going on in the world, aspects of privilege that I have, just better understanding of the dynamics of oppression and privilege that we're all navigating. So with that inspiration, I also have a lot of people who talk to me and say that they want to do that they want to do more of that they want to learn how to stand up for the causes that they believe in. And so that's really why I'm doing this week. Obviously, my advocacy work centers colorism, but I also say it centers anything related to colorism, right? So sometimes I might need to talk about racism. Sometimes I might need to talk about sexism or capitalism or patriarchy in connection with colorism and how it impacts folks. And so before I jump in, let me see who's watching live. Please say hello. Let me know where you're watching from, how you're doing, and what the weather is like where you are. I don't think I have any major announcements to give, but I see a lot of my regular folks joining. Hey, Faith Miranda Mackey. Sarah Bestwill. Madam Safa. Black Metal 626.2. Yes, a lot of regulars. I appreciate y'all so much. Hey, Keisha. What's up, Keisha? What's up, EZ? Dr. Hortensia Jimenez. Hey, good to see y'all. Oh, and Jandel, thank you for the badge. I appreciate that. Hey, Pod Up Close and Comfortable. How you doing? I think I remember seeing some posts from you recently. I think we were talking in the comments or something recently. Sarah Bestwill says, hi from rainy and chilly Boston. Cuddled up with a blanket and a cat. Ooh, that sounds nice. Yes, it's that nice October cuddly blanket cat weather. Bringing out the hot chocolate and cider soon. Joining from Maryland, this is Ambreeze21. Thank you for joining from Maryland. Yay. All right. So we'll see how long this takes. I definitely keep them under an hour. This might be even shorter because it's not as controversial as some of my weeks typically are. But, also I think it's good to, add variety and keep it fresh, kind of switch things up, like what they do with like crops and stuff. You switch it up so that you don't drain the soil of its nutrients. So we'll get back to the more hard-hitting like colorism topics soon. Don't you worry. But I hope this live encourages all of you to continue in your good work or to have the courage to start your good work, whatever that might be. Hey, Modern Formulas from San Francisco Bay Area. I know a lot of folks with the 510 area code, and I actually went to grad school in the Bay Area. So, oh, thank you for the badge, Dr. Jimenez. Yay. Sarah's tape says tuning in from upstate New York. What's up, New York State? Sarah Bestwill, thank you for the badge. Yes, thank y'all. That's really, I'm like really humbled and flattered because I haven't even started yet. And y'all are like already showing so much support. Welcome, Lucy Los. So I have 6 tips, 6 or 7. I don't really know if they break down evenly into like 7 distinct tips, but I'll try to categorize them as best I can. So for anyone who's looking to engage in some kind of advocacy or activist work or take up a cause or start an organization, you have to start with a very compelling motivation, right? And so I know for some of my veterans, like this is like a refresher for you, or I update you on some tips and strategies. But I think for me, the key is not just the motivation, but the source of that motivation. So a lot of people will tell you to find your why. What's your why? Find your why. What's your purpose? What's your mission? But one thing I want to talk about, especially since I work a lot on colorism, is that the kind of motivation matters. And so I really encourage you to find a positive, constructive motivation rather than a destructive one. And so what do I mean by that? We can be motivated by revenge. We can be motivated to action by pettiness, by ego, by seeking fame or popularity, or by trying to get even with folks, or trying to out somebody, or trying to like stick it to the man, right? There are all types of motivations that are actually destructive, not just to others, but to ourselves as well. And so I want here to kind of focus not just on the idea of having a why, but having a why that is compelling and that can sustain you for the long term. So I think those sort of what we call low vibrational motivations these days, that's the popular phrases, is low vibration, high vibration. But those more negative motivations, I think will ultimately sabotage your efforts in the end. And I think they ultimately can make you sick, right? Will lead to depression, and really, it's really not sustainable. So it's not just being spurred onto action, but sustaining that action for as long as you see fit. And I think about the protests, Black Lives Matter protests. People always say, where is everybody 2 weeks later? Where's everybody 3 months later? Where's everybody 2 years later? And part of that is because that initial uprising was fueled by anger and not fueled by enough of something else that it can sustain you long term, right? So after the initial rush of rage, after the initial rush of disappointment and sadness, right, that really takes people to the streets and that leads to this sort of outburst or outpouring of energy, what is going to sustain you long term? And for me, those are the more constructive motivations, such as equality, love, peace, unity, fairness, justice, the survival of the planet, health, right? Even thinking about, like, if I take it to a personal level, like dial it back a little bit, like what's going to motivate you to work out and eat healthy, right? Trying to look like a model in a magazine is a negative motivation that doesn't necessarily work and it's not really healthy, but wanting to have energy in your body and wanting to feel good and proud about the way you're taking care of yourself, right? That's a motivation that can really sustain you in the long term. And so again, to sort of avoid the something happens and we all get angry and then like 2 months later, people are going back to normal. I think we have to, anger is useful, but in order to have a long-term mission, you have to anchor that anger with something else that's more constructive. And so I actually advised a client recently to balance the anger, to give it an anchor or a grounding in something that is more sustainable. And so we can use the actual phrase, like if we're feeling angry, we can say, I am angry about blank because I love blank, right? And so I think that's like one of an indefinite number of strategies that we could use. But doing that gives us the anger that sometimes gets us off the couch, the anger that gets us out of the house, or the anger that gets us on a social media platform to post something, but anchoring it to something that will pull us forward for months and years to come after that initial anger or wash of anger subsides, right? Yeah, and so my initial motivation for this obviously was healing. Like I put it in the title of my effort so that I could keep it front and center at all times. And so if I get caught up in like, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like am I just like combating colorist people on the internet? Am I like always engaging in fights with trolls on the internet? Or, am I trying to make other people feel bad, right? And so having my mission or my motivation in the name, I think really helps me say, okay, I don't need to expend energy in that area, right? Because I'm pivoting back to why I started this in the first place. And then a couple of things I'll say too is that one type of motivation, especially if you're a visual person, is to have an image of who you're here to serve, right? Have that image in your mind. And like for me, I have an image of like me when I was like 3 years old and I was just like sad. I was taking these professional photos and I just would not smile. And so I think about that little girl and I'm like, who is it that I needed when I was younger? Who's the woman that I needed? What's the kind of work, what's the kind of platform that 3-year-old girl would have benefited from, right? Like what did she need in the world? And so I keep that as my motivation. That said though, like every time I see another child who reminds me of that, it kicks off the motivation again. Like it's a new cycle of motivation all over again. When I see or hear about someone's inner child, right? Because let's be honest, it's the inner child that I see a lot online and with clients. And so I'm like, yeah, that inner child, I see you and I hear you and I feel you. And so knowing that you're out there, knowing that I literally empathize with where you are, like that pushes me. That's the reason why I keep showing up, right? Because I have a very clear person or like image in my head as well. So that's just my first, suggestion is to really get clear about what's motivating you. And it's so easy with topics like colorism to just act out of like rage or resentment. But for a dedicated advocacy activist cause that you can sustain in a healthy way that's not damaging to your own well-being, you want to ground that in a sense of self-love, love for your community, etc. Or again, like other words, if you're not into the lovey-dovey thing, maybe it is justice. You prefer a word like that. Let me see some of these comments though, because y'all know that's one of my favorite parts of the lives. Hey, Citizen V, what's up? True says, Amber's21 says, love this already. Sarah Bestwell says, making the future less colorist for our children. Yes, that is so inspiring to me. And I'm like, even if, like I don't get the full benefits of eradicating colorism, I hope that my work sets enough of a foundation for other people to take up the torch and like continue after I'm gone. Hopefully I'm here for a long, long time, but just in case. Dr. Hortensia Jimenez says, yes, sustainability. Absolutely. All right. Amber Swinone says, balance and anchoring. What an effective strategy. Lucid Low says, I am angry about colorism because I love my future children and feel they deserve a better quality of life, and colorism hinders that. Yes, Lucid Lows, come through with the like perfect example. I love my future children. And I don't know if I'll ever have children, but I love your future children as well. I love my niece and my nephew. I love all of y'all's current children, future children, right? And I think I have that educator's mindset where like the world's children are my children, right? Just like a teacher can have thousands of children over the years. I see like all young people as like, okay, that's my child too, And so I definitely am working for them. All right. So another thing I think that has really helped me, and I also say this too, like a lot of the things I'm sharing are not things that I like researched and read this week for the live. Like these are things I have been practicing for the past 10 years, like I got the idea from reading and listening to other people, but I've actually been implementing these practices for the past 10 years. And so the second thing I actually got, in around 2012 or 2013, I was freelancing for a really cool guy named Michael C. Bush. He's like in the business world. I think he's currently the CEO of a great place to work. But black guy, a few years older than me. And so he had a company at the time that's no longer operating, but I was freelancing for them. And so he talks about like mission, vision, and values. And so the idea of having core values that would, again, anchor me in whatever I do is not something I had thought about, right? When I first, because I started blogging in 2011, and then I started working for Michael C. Bush in 2012. And so it was early in my colorism work that I got this idea. And so I was very fortunate that I got the idea to have core values so early on in my work. But right now, so my values, the way I state them, I say be brave, be of service, be smart, and to be Sarah, right? And so I like alliteration, so most of them start with an S. I like so you can like dress it up a little bit to be meaningful and memorable to you. But really the purpose of having values is that it is your ethical standard for yourself. It is your moral litmus test, right? And so, for example, it will determine what opportunities you take. Right? If an opportunity is presented to you, you can measure it against your values, right? Like, is this an opportunity that's going to allow me to be of service? Is this an opportunity that's going to allow me to educate people? Is this an opportunity that allows me to be Sarah, AKA be authentic, right? And so if the opportunity does not align with those 4 values, I know it's a no. It's an automatic no, right? But even like smaller things, like what do I post today, right? What TikTok videos do I make? What TikTok sounds do I use? Even, this is a slight tangent, but when I'm making TikTok videos and I'm looking at what sounds I use, I'm always like, is this person a colorist? Like, is the person who made this sound, especially if it's a music artist, like, are they colorists? And no matter how popular or trendy the sound is, like, I don't want to use it, right? And so having your said values in place will make all your other decisions so much easier in the beginning. But also, like, the integrity behind it is, even if not even if you're not perfect, because none of us are perfect, but you will have like your established reputation over time of sticking to those values. And that's what builds trust with the community you're trying to serve. If you're trying to serve a community or work with a community, they need to see that you stand for something, right? And not just like falling for anything. Like, someone who will fall for anything will stand for nothing. And so you have to know your limits of what you're going to do, what you're not going to do. And so I think even along the way, for me, courage was always one of the core values. Because one, it takes courage to talk about colorism as a dark-skinned woman, right? And so I knew that had to be my beacon of light going forward. It was like, am I being courageous? Is this post courageous? And so now, like, I post things and I'm like, whew, I don't know what people are gonna say. A lot of folks might not like this, but I gotta say it because it aligns with one of my other values, which is being Sarah, being true to my authenticity, right? And even in the way I show up, right? Like, I say I'm Dr. Sarah Webb or Professor Webb, and I have like this sort of like research background, and that's a very different approach than to how other people talk about colorism. So if you look at other platforms around colorism, their vibe might not be as nerdy. But I'm like, but I like that. Like, that's okay that, I'm kind of nerdy and I am could be teachery at times. But that's, again, part of when I'm looking to work with my community or partner with my community. I hope that they see that I am willing to stay true to who I am. And if they can trust me to do that, then they can trust me with whatever they're calling me or asking me to do with them as well. So don't underestimate values and like stating them clearly for yourself and knowing what they're about. You don't always have to like tell people what your values are. Like, I share my values just because I like to be held accountable to them, right? But yeah, start to think about that, and you can adjust them and tweak them over time as well. All right, so let's see. Clouds Blush says, we have a responsibility to all young children, an obligation to center their wellness. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and my sister was at a school board meeting the other day, and she was saying that she was at the school board meeting for other children, for all the children in the district and not just her children, right? Because her children have a certain level of privilege to where they're going to be all right. Most cases, because my sister has a doctorate, her husband has a doctorate, I have a doctorate as their aunt, right? Like they have resources. They have educational resources. They have financial resources. They have a stable home environment. They never have to worry about what they're going to eat, right? And so, yet my sister was still attending the school board meeting to fight for all the children in the district who don't have that kind of infrastructure or have that kind of advocacy from their home, you know? And so I agree with that, Clouds Blush, that it's not just about me. Lucid Low says, yes, we all need to stop supporting those colorist artists. Yes, I agree. Okay, so then a third thing, and so this one is important because a lot of people feel obligated to do activism the way other people are doing it, right? I'm flattered when people say, oh, I want to like model my career after you, or like, I want to, your goals or whatever. And I'm like, thank you. That's like really inspiring for me to know that I'm inspiring other people. And I don't think they mean that literally. Like, I don't think they're going to be on Instagram Live with a blazer and like a mohawk puffs and, amber earrings, right? Like, they're not literally trying to copy me. But I think it's important to leverage your own strengths. And this kind of goes to what people were saying in the comments when I announced this post on Sunday, is allowing people to find their own lane. Like, be okay with finding your own lane and knowing that your activism is going to take on its own shape, its own form. And it's okay if it doesn't mimic or look like everybody else's, right? And so one commenter, man, I forgot their name. I can pull it up really quickly as I think about it. But one commenter mentioned that one thing they learned along the way in their own activist work is that people can have the same goals and yet it looks like they're going in different directions. And they learned to be okay with that, and that it's not us against them. If you're not doing it my way, then hit the highway kind of thing. So let me see. The comment came from S_thetism or S_THETISM. And so they said, we may have the same goal, but we can be very different, have very different views on how to get there. And sometimes it even looks like we're going in different directions, and we need to embrace these differences as activists. And so I say, instead of, like trying to mimic or recreate somebody else's path or journey, is to really practice self-awareness, like know thyself and to thine own self be true. And so for me, Colorism Healing started because I was a year out of my writing MFA program, and I was teaching English classes to 9th grade students. I was teaching them English language arts. And so I wanted to have my own writing practice. I said, how can I keep up my own writing practice and not just teach it, right? And so I started a blog. A year after that blog, Colorism Healing was birthed, because I was just like, oh, I write. If I'm going to focus on colorism, writing is a natural fit for me to do that, right? And so even now, I was talking to Keisha the other day, like, you see me talking live a lot. And I'm not sure, I think more people follow my Instagram than actually follow my blog. But everything I'm saying to you on the live stream, I wrote in a blog post first, right? So this is from my blog post notes. And so I'm still using writing, still using like my research background, even though over time I started doing more video, more live streams. But even that, like talking and doing a live, is a strength of mine because I've been teaching for so long, right? And so I've built up the ability to speak and to do impromptu speaking because of the career that I was already in. But for you, you can be very, very effective and never be on video. You can be very effective and not write. Maybe you do art. Maybe you're a visual artist. Maybe you design graphics. Maybe you are a classroom teacher, but you don't have a social media account, but you design curriculums in schools that teach teachers how to talk about colorism. Maybe you write children's books and then do talks in English classes about those English books and teach children about colorism and about loving their skin tone and their hair texture, right? And so whatever your strength is, like, you can go that route. Side note, after what happened yesterday, a lot of people are talking about not putting all your eggs in one basket, right? And so like if you're centering social media as the main source of your activism or your advocacy work, which I think that there's a place for that as well, right? So I'm not going to like belittle like social media activism as if, you know, other forms of activism are superior. I just think everyone finds their lane. I would say that then you have to like go all in on social media and not put all your eggs in one basket, right? So if you're on social media as the center of your activist work, then really be on social media. Don't just be on Facebook, right? Don't just be on Instagram. Don't just be on TikTok. Like be on social media because your message is vulnerable because you don't own those platforms, right? Instagram owns everything that we post, right? I mean, because we don't read the terms and conditions when we make an account, right? But Instagram has the right to reuse, delete, whatever with all the content that we post. And so again, you don't want to rely too heavily on one social media platform, even if your work is mostly online. So yeah, my work started with my own website, with my own blog. And then I started using social media to then say, hey, I have a blog. Come read my blog. And then I was like, these people ain't got time to come read my blog. They're on Instagram and that's where they want the content. So I was like, okay, I'll put it on my blog, but I'll also put it on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook as well. All right. Oh, and I'll also say, not everybody knows this, but I do other things, right? So I didn't come about in 2020 when everybody was like starting Instagram accounts and like getting big on Instagram because of the trending hashtags. Like again, like I started the blogging in 2011. Shortly after, I started going into classrooms with my fellow teacher colleagues and doing workshops for their students on colorism. I hosted a couple of my own events in Baton Rouge at the local library, doing like a workshop for people on colorism. Now, since COVID-19, a lot of my stuff is virtual, but I still do trainings at universities, at different businesses and things like that. And so I think too, like, don't be misled or don't assume that what you see on one platform is all that there is to someone's work or someone's activism. And so for yourself too, you can be doing the work even if it's not quote unquote visible to people. All right, let's see. I think we're halfway through, and it's only 2:26. Good point, sis. Some folk even get angry if you don't approach the work like they do. Oh, yeah. And they say, oh, you're a sellout, or you ain't real, or you ain't woke, or whatever. I should have put that. That's not one of the tips I wrote out on my blog post, but I'm gonna say it right now. A tip is to decide who you are and allow people to think whatever they need to think about you. One of my absolute favorite activists, the one and only Malcolm X. There was this clip, y'all. I was so blessed to fall upon this clip. It's like an 11-second YouTube clip, and I don't even know if the YouTube video is still available, right? But Malcolm X was talking to a white reporter, and the reporter asked him, do you consider yourself a militant? And Malcolm paused and he said, I consider myself Malcolm. Period. Point blank. I don't care if y'all call me militant. I don't care if y'all call me too militant. I don't care if y'all call me not militant enough. I am Malcolm. Take it or leave it, right? And so I think that is so important for people who want to do this work, because you will be criticized. You definitely will be criticized. There will definitely be people. And not everyone who criticizes you is against you or doesn't support you. Like I receive criticism from my supporters as well, but there are other people who will like criticize to hate. I'm just being real. Like are criticized not to hate, but because they are so narrowly focused on what they're doing and their way that they really just conceptually can't see that you too are on the same page, that you too are fighting for the same cause, right? And so don't take it personally. Don't take it personally if people say you're too militant or you're not militant enough, right? You just got to be you, because, yeah. So I just leave that with y'all. Do you consider yourself a militant? I consider myself Malcolm. All right. Amber's 21 says, should those who are still in a place of unproductive rage and anger start with advocacy? So Amber's 21, thank you for this question. So again, the question by AMBRYS21, because I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, so I'll spell it, asked, should those who are still in a place of unproductive rage and anger start with advocacy? I think advocacy would be a great place to channel that in a healthy way and to help you cope with and carry that rage. Because I also say, like, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I know enough to know that keeping that rage bottled up, keeping that anger bottled up without some type of outlet will like literally make you sick. And so I think advocacy work is actually a great way to take anger, which is a natural human emotion, and actually use it to change the things that are making you so angry, right? And Angela Davis said it, but like it's also just the truism that people say, or actually it's AA. It's an AA mantra, I think, Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Give me the strength to change the things I can, the strength to accept the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? And so definitely advocacy, taking that rage to change what you have the power to change. Janelle Crutch says it can also be how you move in your own life and leadership positions. You might explicitly search for and hire darker skinned people of any ethnic group to be anti-colorist, for example. Ooh, thank you, Janelle Crutch. It's so funny because Janelle's my sister and I can see her through the glass right now. So I'm like talking to her actually. But yes, you can be an activist at work. And I know because my platform uses social media so much, like a lot of my examples might include social media, but definitely when you go to work, you can still apply the idea of having motivation, of having a set values, of leaning into your strengths, right? Like all the things I'm applying could apply like if you're in HR or if you're the head of a sales team at your job. You can still apply like, okay, these are my values as a salesperson. These are my values as an HR professional. And this is what I'm going to actively seek to do in the realm where I have some influence. So good point. Thank you, Lucid Lowe's, for the badge. Okay, let's see. Keisha Harris said, bloop. Citizen Wee says, Brother Malcolm was sublime, indeed. Lucid Lowe says, I'm not there yet. I'm afraid to be called militant or aggressive. Yeah, that's okay. Especially if you don't see yourself as militant or aggressive, there's nothing wrong with, not wanting people to perceive you as you really are. But I think that can't stop you from doing what you do and being who you are, right? So I think there's a difference. Like you can want people to see you as you are and yet still do what you have to do regardless of how they're perceiving you. But definitely also when you come to the realization that you can't control how people perceive you, right? So I described a little bit about myself, and there are probably people who were listening to me who was like, I don't see you as that at all. It was like, that's definitely not how I read you. So we can't, no matter how rigid we try to be or how strict we try to be, like every person who sees us will have a unique perception of who we are, like a slightly different version of it. But I think this might be for another conversation that we could continue to talk about in other places. But there is so much stigma around being called militant or aggressive, especially as Black women, right? And so that's a very unique case that I'll acknowledge as well. All right. Thank you, Eborina. Thank you for the badge. Y'all are so giving and generous. Citizen Lee, the Serenity Prayer. Thank you. So the Serenity Prayer is what I was saying about realizing what I can't control, what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay. So then I'll add for sustaining and growing the work. Because remember I mentioned that we can be motivated to action through anger and rage and pettiness, bitterness, like, I want revenge. And I'm not necessarily for like activist work, but just like motivation to do anything in life can definitely be like, She did what? I'm getting off my couch and I'm going to drive up to her house right now, right? So like anger can really move people to act. But what has worked for me is to also add joy to it. And like literally, I mean, y'all can probably tell, like I literally enjoy this. Like I've been doing this every week. I have not missed a week so far in 2021. Clearly, I'm not just doing this to rant or to rave. Like I actually enjoy talking to y'all and having y'all comment and like read your comments. Some people who probably listening to the podcast and stuff, they're probably like, oh my gosh, why is she like talking about the comments and like, why can't she just get to her point? And I'm like, but that's the joy of it. That's the fun of it. And so when you can find things like that bring you joy, you'll keep coming back. You will be able to maintain. Now, don't get me wrong. I will be taking a vacation from this, but I'll come back again after my vacation, right? And so I think finding what's joyful for you, and then don't underestimate how much work it actually is. Because even folks who have like online activist profiles, like that's still a lot of work. And so people say, oh, you're just posting on Instagram. You're just making YouTube videos. Like people are putting in a lot of effort to educate folks, right? And education is a legitimate activist practice. But again, I actually, for the past 10 years, I enjoyed creating my blog graphics. Like I enjoy creating my YouTube thumbnails. I enjoy editing a TikTok video or editing like the little intro that I do on my YouTube channel. I have a like 60-second video clip that I play as my intro. Like I enjoyed piecing that together and designing that, right? But again, if you don't enjoy editing videos, either you can outsource it, you can hire someone who does, hire, a black person, a dark-skinned black person to edit your videos, or you can not do video, right? Or you could just do unedited videos. You could just get on there and talk and not worry about fancy editing, right? And so I think for the long term, be unapologetic about eliminating things that you don't enjoy. Either it's just not doing it or paying someone else to do it, right? And that's perfectly fine, especially if you're like really, really into it. Like, and I'm talking about if you want to like start an organization or like really have an activist platform, versus people who want to live their regular life, but maybe post a little bit every now and then to educate, right? Then you'll realize you'll burn out really fast if you're doing a whole bunch of busy work and like small tasks that you hate or that you dread. Burnout will happen really, really fast. So try to do things that you also enjoy. It's a very practical thing. Citizen V says, it's a lot of work when you do it well and strive to be accurate with facts. That's true, Citizen V. Yes. That's the caveat. It can be easy. It can be minimal work if you're just posting whatever and not holding yourself accountable and not being responsible, right? So to do it responsibly, it does take a lot of work. Oh, and this is one of my favorites, y'all. I think I have two more. So I must go ahead and speed it up a little bit. But this is my favorite. If you want to do activist work, if it's in person, if you're creating events, maybe you're an event planner and you do really good with like doing fundraisers or like bake sales to like raise money for the local orphanage or the local homeless shelter, like whatever live event, online event, live streams on Instagram, whatever you're doing is focused on the people who do show up. Okay. One of my pet peeves, one thing that really irritates me is when I will go to an event, like an in-person event, for example, and the host or organizer will say, oh, well, nobody showed up. And I'm looking around at me and like other people and I'm like, but we're here. So are we nobody? Like, are we invisible? Right? And so for you, if you're starting out and you're like getting 2 likes and you're like, oh man, nobody's liking my post. I'm like, 2 people liked it. That's not nobody. And so I think, one, in terms of emotional sustainability, if you're gonna discouragement is real. Like, discouragement is a real thing we have to battle when doing this work. And so if you're looking for the big numbers, especially starting out, if you're looking for to have 200 people watching your live stream, or you're not happy, you're dissatisfied because you didn't get 6,000 likes, right? You're not going to stay in it for very long. You're not going to be able to sustain it long enough to get to 6,000 likes. Let me say that. If you're oh, I didn't have 200 people watching my live stream, then I'm not going to stick with it long enough to possibly get to 200 people watching my live stream, right? So again, that sustainability piece, you really have to be grateful for and cherish every individual person. Even if we're talking about 1 million people, 1 million people consists of one individual person 1 million times. And so I know for something like colorism, I want to grow my platform because I want awareness to increase. I want more people in the world to know about colorism. I want more people in the world to talk about colorism. But it's not every individual person along the way is insignificant or doesn't matter, right? And so loving that one person who's watching your live and being yeah, thank you for coming, and talking to them and asking them questions, or responding to the one comment that you get on your post, or the 2 comments you get on your post. Now, I will say I'm not as good as responding to my comments on Facebook and YouTube. But, I'm on all the platforms. If you saw my post from today, I'm on a lot of different platforms. But it might take me 2 weeks, but I will try to respond. And so I say this in every live stream, but I like y'all. I do. I like each of you individually. Each one of you are so interesting to me. And I didn't understand this when I first started teaching high school. People used to say, if you can just reach one person, if you can just reach one student, you've made a difference. And I used to be no, I want to reach them all. I want to reach all my students. I want to make a difference for everybody. And it wasn't until I actually became a teacher, started teaching, and have been teaching for many years, that I was oh, now I know what people are talking about. The one matters. The one is significant. The one is important. And so focus the people who do show up to your event. If you were expecting 100 people and you only get 10 people, do not say nobody showed up. Or I have these events and nobody comes. When you have 3 people who come consistently, because one, it's disrespectful to the people who do show up. It's disrespectful, and it dishonors the few people who did make the efforts to comment or to or to watch or to attend your events. And so those 3 people, give them everything you've got. Because if you sort of withhold your best stuff for the large audience, you won't get a large audience. You won't grow your audience if the people who are already there are not getting the best of what you have to offer. I see this one comment from Latanya R. Moore. Good to see you, Latanya. Quality versus quantity isn't relative. I would rather have 2 sincere people than 200 there for the wrong reasons. And actually, one person can impact an entire generation. Amen to that. Yes. You never know who that one person is. That one person you might say, oh, well, I don't have 1 million followers. I just have 1 follower. But if that 1 follower is Oprah, then you good, right? I know that's a cliche example, but let's say that 1 follower is, I don't know, the president of something, or you never know, and you make such a difference to them that they can then go back to their communities where they do have a 1 million people in their community and share that message and spread that message. And it's not even about oh, if my 1 follower is Oprah, then I'll become famous. It's no, if my 1 follower is Oprah, I know the message will get out there. And so putting the message before yourself is also really important, because it's not a popularity contest, right? And so yes, focus on growth in terms of reach. You want to grow your reach because your cause, your mission is important. And the more people who know about it, the more effective the work can be, etc. But it's not for the sake of what they call vanity metrics, or just being popular for the sake of it, right? So yeah. Also, I'll say too, to whom much is given, much is required. So transparency moment, as my audiences get bigger, I actually like have a little bit of anxiety because I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with all these people? And my audiences aren't even like that big, quote unquote, right? But it's like, I feel more responsibility. I'm like, okay, now I really have to like step it up even more, that much more. Because it's precious to me to have people listen to you. Like, that's precious. Like, don't take that for granted. Just the one person. And when I started my podcast, I was getting like one listener. And yet I'm still in, like every week I put out the podcast because that one listener is important to me. Okay. And then the last thing I'll say is to keep learning and recalibrating. So this kind of goes, thinking about what your motivation is. And I know that there is a thing like celebrity activism, and there are people who will take advantage of causes just to boost their own clout. But I think for people who want to continue long-term advocacy and really do justice to the cause and not just be like the face of the cause or whatever, it's like you have to continue studying that. You have to stay up to date on what's going on with your cause, what's happening with your cause. It's good to learn who the other people are that are also working in that arena, working in that industry. And then when it comes to recalibrating, I love recalibrating. I love like self-reflection and pivoting as necessary. Kind of geek out about it, okay? But even revisiting your values, like checking in periodically and saying, okay, what have I been doing for the past 6 months? And has it been true to my values that I stated when I started? What have I been doing for the past 3 weeks? And has it gotten me closer to my actual mission, or has it been a distraction, right? And so you have to constantly check in with yourself, continue to check in with yourself, know where you are, know what you're doing, where you're going, where you're headed, and why. And what I do is I have documents. I created like actual documents with all of this stuff stated for myself. Like who I am, why I'm doing this, what my values are, who I'm here to serve, how I can serve them using my own unique skills, the channels that I'm using to do the work, etc. Like I have all of that in documents. And when I first started, I would read the document. I would read portions of it before going live. I would read that document before doing a coaching session. I'd read that document before giving a speech or teaching a workshop or doing a podcast interview with someone, just to center myself and remind me, like, why am I doing this, right? And so being intentional and constantly checking yourself. Because you don't want to get to a point where your audience has to check you. It's okay if they do, like it's good if they do check and be like, no. You out of pocket for that one. So it's better if you can check yourself first and not have it get to that point. And then I also be clear and transparent too, that there's ebb and flow. So the vast majority of my audience, like probably 80%, 90% of my audience has only been following me within the last year, right? So I said I've been at this for a decade, and yet all of my 12,000 Instagram followers, before 2020, I think I had like 3,000 Instagram followers, right? So the vast majority of y'all have only found me and been with me for like a year now. And so just know that the Dr. Webb you're looking at now, I did not look like this in 2013. I didn't have an Instagram in 2013. I didn't have a Facebook page. And my journey was not a linear, steady climb. Like there were years when I didn't do the writing contest. Right. And so that's like, when I talk about how many writing contests have I done, people try to calculate based on what year it is. I was like, no, because there were 2 years where I didn't do the writing contest because I was in grad school and I didn't have any money to pay people to participate in the contest. So I was like, well, we're just not going to do that. 1 year I was starting a new job and I moved to a new city. So I didn't host the contest because there was a lot going on in my life. There have been months when I didn't post anything. Right. And so I also say that, like, I feel like I'm better now in this work than I've ever been. But to anyone on the outside looking in, like, just know that I didn't wake up like this. Right. Like this was a journey of 10 years. So and I, again, appreciate and love the opportunity to meet y'all. Like that's really one of the blessings of this work is that I've met folks like y'all along the way. And so I'm ever grateful and appreciative. All right. Felicia Sunflower says, needed to hear exactly that. Lucid Low says, we know who that one follower won't be. Beyonce. Ooh, Lucid Low, that's funny. Y'all are so funny. Like when I say these lives bring joy to my life, I'm serious, y'all. The funniness. All right, Shivam. So I don't take participant requests live, but if you want to come on live at a future date or a later date, you can DM me and we can talk about you coming on. Says, what I've been doing these past weeks has been a distraction to my goals. I'm ashamed to say that. Yeah, I say, you don't have to be ashamed because we all get distracted. Like everybody gets distracted. So it's human nature to get distracted sometimes, right? So I say just recalibrate, realign, right? Like it's just like when you're driving, really. When you're driving, like sometimes you have to like get back into your lane because you were looking at the billboards or whatever, and so you kind of drifted out of your lane, and you just come back to your lane and keep going. You'll be good. All right. Says Clouds Blushes, I really appreciate this live. Latanya Armour is laughing and losing those. Black Knight 06 26.2 says, I love it how we are beautiful, messy, just I love it. Yes, beautiful and messy and just being real humans at the end of the day. So on that note, I'm going to leave you all until next week. I have not decided the topic yet, but I'll let y'all know on Sunday. All right. Thank you so much for joining me this week and for all the other weeks or whenever you're listening to this, if you're listening to the recording. I so appreciate your time and attention. Much love. Bye. Mwah.